A Pokemon Classic Collection or more Pokemon Classic games are going to be coming to the Switch and the Switch 2, and here is exactly why. We don't have any big releases this year or next year until Winds and Waves comes out. We've had leaks that Winds and Waves is going to officially fully release in late 2027. So we are about 15, 16, 17 months out from the release of the next big Pokemon game. And in between that, we don't currently have anything big really planned besides from, small updates or DLC content for other games. But specifically, another classic game ported over to the Switch and the Switch 2 would make the most sense. Now, this could be the remakes of Generation 2 and 3, so it could be Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, or just the base Gen 2 and 3 games with Gold, Silver, and hopefully Crystal, and Sapphire, Ruby, and Emerald. Specifically, Emerald would be the best. The 3DS eShop allowed you to buy Generations 1 and 2, but not Generation 3. So this would be a perfect time for us to finally get those Generation 3 games on a modern day console, because Gen 3 games are actually kind of getting old now. And of course, the original games are definitely pretty old now. We also have a real data mine from the Fire Red and Leaf Green files that literally have a connection to the Generation 3 games, which makes sense because the Gen 1 remakes are technically Gen 3 games, of course. But why are those files specifically still on the game on the Switch and the Switch 2? Well, that leaves everybody to think that it is going to be a Generation 3 port, potentially over to the Switch and the Switch 2. But of course, that would just be awkward to do Gen 3 and not give us Generation 2. We're also in a time where people love classic games in general. People want the classic games on the Switch, especially with Pokemon, of course. And Emerald would obviously be the big seller, so maybe they could even do Ruby and Sapphire first, and then a little bit later down the line do Pokemon Emerald. Or preferably, just give us Emerald, Ruby, and Sapphire, and people could just play the one that they're most nostalgic for, or just play through them all if they really want to.
We also had this official artwork that got posted, and this is actually meant to celebrate Pokemon's 30th anniversary. And I talked about this in my video as well, but I find it very strange how it features Pikachu, Mudkip, Trico, and Torchic, because those are obviously the starter Pokemon from Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And also just the fact that they have them in the same kind of art style that they always used to use to promote the Gen 3 games. I think it's so obvious at this point, and this official artwork is actually being used on some new official merchandise, and I find it very interesting that they'd be selling merchandise, these 3 starter Pokemon on them specifically, because, you'd probably assume that they'd be selling merch with Grout, Gekwa, and Pombon on it, Those are the brand new starter Pokemon. I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe not, but I definitely think this isn't for no reason. They definitely have some kind of intention behind this, and the most obvious reason has to be these Gen 3 game ports.
It is still the 30th anniversary Pokemon all year round. That's what they have claimed themselves, so it literally would align up perfectly because of the fact that there's nothing releasing, because we know for a fact Winds and Waves obviously is officially coming out in 2027, and the only other things that really would make sense to release between then and now is a Pokeopia DLC, potentially a ZA DLC Part 2, which is maybe, unlikely. All I know is that people have been really enjoying Fire Red, Leaf Green. They've been shiny hunting, just loving the childhood nostalgia, or just experiencing the games for the first time ever. And that's also why I do think if we were to get another Pokemon Presents this year, this would be what they would announce. Like, this would be the big seller and the big topic for that Pokemon Presents if they're not going to be giving us another Winds and Waves trailer, or if they're not going to be giving us any more information about Winds and Waves in general. The only thing that they could announce that people would actually care about, aside from random little updates and things here and there, another classic game would make the most sense. Now, I don't know which one I would want more, Gen 2 or 3 first. I feel like it still is possible they could do maybe a Gen 2 game, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or just the original games first, and then a couple months down the line, maybe for Pokemon Day of 2027, they could drop and reveal the next classic game to be making its way over, because if you don't remember, Fire Red and Leaf Green actually released the exact same day Pokemon Day was on this year, which makes sense because that's the anniversary of the games anyways, but they still could do the same thing for maybe Gen 3 remakes, where they would potentially release those on Pokemon Day as well. And then of course the Gen 2 games would probably release sometime around October or November of this year. That way we have that little gap in between the games to actually play through them fully, do our shiny hunts, and just get ready for the next game to be able to hopefully trade back and forth. Heart Gold and Soul Silver, in a lot of people's eyes, are the best Pokemon game of all time. And same with Generation 3, honestly. We have so many Generation 3 fans, especially Emerald and the remakes of the games. And going back to the 3DS Virtual Console, we did have Red, Blue, and Yellow, and as well as that we also had Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So we had all 3 versions of the game. And what's interesting about that is that the Fire Red and Leaf Green games, it was just Fire Red, Leaf Green. There was no third version. So of course we had red, blue, and yellow. And that's of course why we didn't get the third version released on the Switch. But it just makes you think, like, if we do get Heart Gold and Soul Silver remakes ported over to the Switch or the Switch 2, it would just be Heart Gold, Soul Silver, of course. And if we did just get the original games, they would probably give us Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So the same would go for the Generation 3 games. If we got the remakes, you know, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, it'd probably just be the remakes rather than the original Gen 3 games, which are Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. So it'd be 3. And we also know that Pokemon and Game Freak, they love to tease and hint at things in the future. Like, they always like to hint at a future game in a current game, if that makes sense. So like Scarlet and Violet had a ton of random hints here and there, some, you know, a lot of hints for Winds and Waves or Gen 10. It even had a hint for Pokeopia. So with that being said, in Pokemon Legends ZA, the Mega Dimension DLC, we actually did get to go to the Sky Pillar, or at least some sort of version of the Sky Pillar. And there, of course, we did get to encounter Rayquaza. Now, what's interesting about this is I don't believe we got to visit anywhere else. I may be wrong on that, so please correct me on this if I am actually incorrect, but I do believe that was pretty much the only place, like, outside of Kalos that we were able to actually explore. But it is just interesting how we were able to see the Sky Pillar, specifically Rayquaza. Of course, you know, there is stuff with like Groudon and Kyogre as well, which is still Generation 3. So there, right on the top, is a very big hint of that. We also had this post from Centro Leaks basically saying, you know, here's some cool artwork where it is literally Mega Rayquaza on the Sky Pillar, but right next to Legends ZA photos, which is very interesting. So like, why is there so much Generation 3 love right there? And at the point of time that I'm recording this video right now, the anniversary of Pokemon Emerald, which this is from the official Pokemon page. Obviously this doesn't really mean much right here. All I know is that it's at least still on their radar. At least Game Freak and the Pokemon Company actually remember Generation 3. I always love when you get like an anniversary of a Pokemon game post. That's always so fun. We also have had a lot of various random 4chan posts, which I know 4chan is a very odd place. A lot of these leaks never actually end up seeing the light of day, but a lot of leaks actually do become true. So this is a leak that my bro Jzard actually found a while back, and I feel like isn't really being talked enough. So this person brings up that exact same concept, how they will bring out Ruby and Sapphire first, and then eventually later on they will give us Pokemon Emerald, potentially for Pokemon Day, Pokemon Presents of 2027. And this person claims it will be the Switch and the Switch 2, which would be great if they make it Switch 1 and the Switch 2. And then events with Mew and Deoxys would be really cool. So that's obviously another thing with these classic games that I love is, you know, the event side of things. Like, they could do all these awesome fun events again. Now, obviously, like I said, this is a 4chan post, so definitely take that with a grain of salt, but I still think it is going to happen. I think we've seen more than enough hints and teases specifically for a Generation 3 Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald game being ported over soon. If you guys have anything more to add or any more theories to this concept and idea, please let me know. Make sure to check out Jzard's link in the description down below. We also did a collab over on his channel about this topic. And right before we wrap it up, we have a major announcement. Jzard's and I are actually doing a giveaway in our Discord server for copies of Pokemon Winds and Waves when they do fully release. It is completely free to join. It is in the Discord, link in the description down below, and there's a channel in the Discord server that will give you all the instructions. We just want to give back to you guys because you guys rock so much. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to help me reach my goal of 50,000 subs, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.